Welcome to the Living Artist Podcast. I'm your host, Preston M. Smith. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Living Artist Podcast. I'm Preston M. Smith, at PMS Artwork everywhere on internet land and socials. I want to thank you for landing on this podcast. Whether you're a professional artist, just getting started in the art world, a collector of art, or just consider yourself a creative person, this podcast has something for you. I like to think of it as a fun way to rant and talk to other creative people about living the life of an artist, surviving and getting ahead in the art world, and enjoying your life. But most importantly, not waiting until you're dead to make it happen. All right, let's get started.
This is a test. I repeat, this is only a test. This is a test of the emergency video podcast system. We will now send you to a previously recorded session.
Hi, everybody. Well, this is a test of the video version of the podcast. Should I do a video version of the podcast? Should I not do a video version of the podcast? That is what I'm interested to hear from all of you out there. So please chime in if you think that this would be something that you would be interested in with the Living Artist Podcast. I can bring you this content via solo episodes like this where I'm just rambling to you, or when I'm interviewing somebody like Mike Collins, for example, who I may or may not have coming up again soon. So please let me know, weigh in, tell me if you think that this is a good idea or a bad idea, something that you would be willing to commit time to and your eyeballs to, as well as your earlobes, of course, your ears. And excuse the mess behind, but this is what it looks like to be a living artist. Get it? See what I did there? All right, everybody, let me know what you think, and we may or may not see you soon.
Sponsor!
This concludes your video podcast test. We now return you to your regularly scheduled program already in progress.
Welcome back to the podcast. I am your host, Preston Smith. Wouldn't it be funny if I did the entire podcast with this voice? Ha 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 ha. Makes me laugh to just think about it.
Okay, that's enough of that. Come on, that was fun. But for realsies, welcome back to the podcast, everybody. That was a test that I did on YouTube. If you are subscribed to my YouTube channel, you probably got that in all of its video glory, or disglory, if that's a word. Infamy, I should say. You probably got all that already, and I'm just releasing it here for anybody who didn't hear that, because I am toying with the idea of putting a video version of the podcast up. Check it out on YouTube if you want to get a little taste. I'll probably be having a little bit better video quality, or maybe I won't. Who knows? I am a team of one after all, so it's kind of one of those things where you get what you pay for. You get what you can do. So yeah, I wanted to put that out there to get your feedback as well. If you hadn't heard that, if you hadn't heard it on Instagram, if you hadn't heard it on YouTube, I would love to hear what you think about a video version of the podcast. I would still be releasing the audio version of the podcast. It would just be like a complimentary video version of some of the monologues and at very least maybe some of the interviews, which would be cool to see the people that we're talking to, maybe to see me. Who knows? Maybe you want to see me as well. But just to get a little bit of a video version and, get some more value out of that if you think it's valuable. So weigh in on that. It's just one of those things where it might be raw because I am a team of one after all. So I'm not sure how much editing I'll be able to do editing the audio version and the video version, but it could be kind of a fun behind the scenes raw version. That could be something interesting to do, but I'm just throwing it out there. I want to hear what you think. I want to hear your feedback. Maybe you love it. Maybe you don't love it. Maybe you're on the fence, but the more I hear from people, the more I can kind of get an idea of what I want to do. And so far, the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive of doing a video version. But I will say, this is a testing episode, but that's going to go further than just this video version test. We're going to talk about testing in general, really. So let's get into that a little bit too. So sometimes the best way to grow as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as an artist, as a person, is to test things out. That's really where we kind of test our boundaries and, push ourselves to our limits a little bit and see what works, see what doesn't work, and develop some other ideas. For example, just by kicking this out there into the world, doing this video version test, which I did just kind of on a whim last Friday, I was just, putting it out there, and I got some ideas from it that were very interesting that I would have not gotten had I not done that, which, for example, okay, maybe the video version, the normal, run-of-the-mill video version doesn't work, but what about doing something raw? What about doing something that is unedited so you get to see all the warts and all of everything, some of the ums and the likes and the ticks and the bloopers and stuff like that? That could be interesting. That could be different. And that's something that I hadn't really thought about before. Just throwing that around right now, it could be interesting to do a blooper video version, just some funny stuff that happens that I cut out. And that would be different from other podcasts. That's something that I would have not thought of had I not just put out this video tester on Friday on a whim, really. I was just kind of bored for a second, and I was like, let me just put this out there and see and test the waters, because I had been kicking around the idea in my subconscious for a long time, because everybody's doing video versions. I have my own feelings about video versions. I don't always think they're necessary, because most of the time I'm listening on audio anyway while I'm doing work, so I'm not really watching video. But I do dip into YouTube and see some video stuff from time to time, and it can be interesting. Just to see what people look like, see their mannerisms. You get a different feel sometimes seeing how people articulate stuff. And it does give you some options to do some different video stuff that can be more teachable when it comes to certain tangible things that you're talking about on a podcast. So that is interesting. So that is up in the air right now. And that's something that's interesting about testing stuff. So how else can you test yourself as an artist, because I think a lot of times we get into our comfort zones and we just go, this is working. I don't really want to rock the boat anymore. But really, life and your art career is all about growth. If you're not growing, I wouldn't say it's if you're not growing, you're dying, because that's a little extreme. But if you're not growing, you're definitely stagnant. And I think it just gives a lot of people a chance to maybe pass you by, or for things to catch other people's eyes and just be like, okay, well, this artist has just been doing the same thing for 10, 20 years. I'm not talking about style specifically, although it can be style. You can be testing your style and doing different things, which I've switched styles. I have a lot of sub-styles and things that I dip into from time to time. I've switched major styles from pop surrealism to abstract a long time ago. So that's interesting and that's fun to do, and it does test yourself and it tests your audience. But I'm not just talking about your artistic style. I'm talking about how you see yourself growing as an artist / entrepreneur, how you see your career growing, how you approach galleries. Have you ever gone out and tried to do a grant program? Have you ever tried to do an art fair? Have you ever tried to do a studio visit where you have people come to your studio, where you articulate something online, where you put out something like a form where people can fill out if they're interested in coming to your studio, and then you can put it up on Calendly or something and schedule studio visits? That's something you could do that's very interesting. If you've never done any of these things before, maybe it's time to test yourself and see this, because the only negative thing that can happen is really not negative at all. It can just be you learn something, and that's very powerful in and of itself. You can be like, well, okay, I'm not maybe the studio visit person, or I'm not really the grant writer person, or maybe if you are the grant writer person, you hire somebody to write something for you, like a proposal or something like that. Maybe that's not your strength. Maybe it's an opportunity to develop that strength, but maybe it's also an opportunity to kind of hire somebody to do it for you if they do it better. Maybe it's an opportunity to employ some AI technology to write something, or to help you write something, or to generate some ideas. The point is if you're not testing these things, you're not really testing yourself, and you're not giving yourself growth opportunities, and you're closing a lot of doors that could lead to some really interesting paths in your art career. So that is one standard way to look at testing. What are you not doing? What are you afraid of doing? What have you had kicking around the back of your mind that you haven't tried yet, that you haven't tested? And maybe, make some goals to try to test some of these things out and see where they lead you, or, at least see which ones work for you. You can put those in your toolkit and you can scrap the ones that don't work. It's time now to do some of this stuff. At no time like the present, because if we really aren't growing, we are stagnant for sure. So that's something that I would really highly recommend to do. But I think also testing gives you an opportunity to flip the script a little bit, which I think is really interesting. We've talked about this a little bit, but I love to do a reminder of some of these things because it reminds me, first of all, and I always go, yeah, why did I get away from that? That was something really interesting. And that is, if you're testing something, you can test yourself, well, okay, this is the way the general populace is going. Oh, everybody's going the video version of the podcast? Well, what if I do the opposite, as Tim Ferriss says? What if I do the opposite and I do just an audio version? I just double down on that and I become like the best audio version I can, because if I try to do the audio and the video, maybe I spread myself too thin, maybe I get stressed out a little bit, maybe the chronic pain pops up a little bit more, maybe that leads to a cascade of negative traits or something like that with me and my career. So maybe doubling down and just becoming the best audio version would be awesome. Maybe it means something else. Like I said, what if I do the opposite, which is instead of doing this polished studio video version, which everybody's doing, which I really frankly can't afford to hire a bunch of people to do a studio version of it. It would be like a standard just video version of recording it like you'd record a Zoom thing, or you'd record from your phone, or you record from your home equipment. That's what it would be. So if I can't afford something like that, well, what if I did the opposite? What if I did something which was, or something, that's not maybe the opposite, but something that's a lateral move, which is like, okay, maybe I do a blooper reel, or maybe I do a raw version, which has not really been seen before, which I think would be interesting. Now, I know I'm putting that out there and some people might snatch that up, but you heard it here first, everybody. But also, like, I see Tim Ferriss, for example, he's doing these walking versions because he has back problems too, which, we can go into that a little bit down the road if you want at some point, how back problems can kind of plague certain types of people, personality types, go-getters, achievers, and stuff like that. But, that's for another episode. Anyway, he's trying out a version of the podcast, which is a walking version. He's recording it while he's doing a walk, which is great for his back. It's great for his fitness. It's great for his cardiovascular health. So he's trying out this whole walking version, and I just listened to his first one of those, and I thought it was pretty cool. It's a little different. You do hear a little huffing and puffing, but it does give you an option to kind of like get some endorphins going and to flood the brain with oxygen, which maybe you think better. Maybe you make some connections that you wouldn't have made in your brain just doing a sit-down version where you're like lethargic and isolated in your chair. Who knows? Maybe. But that's something that comes from testing. And it's something that comes from not just going with the mainstream flow and just, what if I do a little tweak on this? What if I do a little sidestep here? So that's something that's very interesting. And that doesn't have to be just with podcasts. That can be with you and your art career. What are you doing? What is everybody else doing? Maybe everybody's jumping on the NFT bandwagon back in the past. I never jumped on it. I dipped my toes in. I never really jumped 100%. I tried it out, but it just didn't feel right to me, so I never really committed to it. And I'm glad I didn't, because I think it would have been something that spread me way too thin. And I doubled down on some of the stuff that worked for me, and so far that's been effective. I do think it's important to understand new media and what's out there. Like, it's important to understand what's going on with AI. Doesn't mean that you have to double down and become an AI artist or a digital artist. I would actually recommend not doing that. I would recommend becoming well-versed in what AI can do for you, both from a marketing standpoint, a business standpoint, and from, maybe even a visual art standpoint, generating ideas and things like that. Yeah, sure, do that. That's great. That's 100% important, but maybe it's just not like about jumping on the bandwagon, making a quick buck, becoming an AI artist, because that market is going to be flooded. So maybe it is finding some ways to do what is either the opposite of that or something that is like bypassing that, something that's a lateral move, something that's kind of like jumping over that and finding what's on the other side of that. I think that's very interesting. And that comes from testing yourself, testing these norms, these societal and artistic norms, and trying to kind of like push yourself to come up with some unique ideas. That's something that I'm doing all the time, whether I'm working on the computer, whether I'm doing like my photoshopping of my images for the day, or whether I'm in the studio painting. I'm always kicking around ideas and different ideas in my brain, or like I'm letting my subconscious kind of bubble up and come to the surface. And some of these ideas come out like when I'm meditating, or like maybe I'm hanging upside down. Who knows what I'm doing? Maybe I'm doing like a cold shower or a cold plunge or something like that. Maybe I'm sitting in front of the red light panel. These ideas percolate and come up, and I've just become good at listening to them. So I'm kind of always testing myself to come up with some new ideas. And this could be ideas for your work as well. It doesn't have to be like go marketing stuff or art career stuff. It can just be as far as developing new ideas for your work. Like maybe you want to take your work in another direction. Maybe you want to explore some more texture in your work. Maybe you want to explore a different color palette. Maybe you're just like all about I want to try a limited palette or something. So maybe it's just about kicking around those ideas in your brain while you're doing other things. But these are all forms of testing yourself and testing your ideas and testing your boundaries. I think we always need to be pushing our boundaries a little bit. I've been a little safer recently with my chronic pain, but I still push myself to try different things. This video podcast thing was a test. It was just that. It was like pushing myself, allowing myself to grow and adapt and to maybe come up with an idea that I didn't foresee going into it. That is something that I'm all about and is very important to me. So hopefully that's something that gives you some value too and kind of makes you think about how can you test yourself? How can you come up with some new ideas? How can you push some boundaries that might either propel you forward or propel you sideways, in a different way, something that opens a new door that you hadn't really previously thought of. That's what this episode is all about. Hopefully you get some value out of it. Hope you're doing well out there. Hope everybody in California stayed dry and, stayed safe during these earthquake swarms we've been getting. It's been a crazy, tempestuous time out there. So hope everybody's staying safe. Looking forward to bringing you some new episodes as usual. I do have some interviews coming, I promise. It's just been a matter of coordinating with certain people. I did do an interview with somebody else, and it was an interview of me, and the audio failed. So I was going to re-release that here. It was a really good podcast. I really brought the energy, and I thought it was going to be something that was going to be fun to share. But sadly, it was not recorded, so that will forever be lost. But looking forward to bringing you some interviews of my own, and of course, I will bring you other interviews. I've got a new magazine interview coming out in the next couple of weeks, so I'll be sharing that as well on my social media. But in the meantime, take care of yourselves, take care of everybody else in your immediate family, your friend circle, your other artist friends. Let's be good to each other out there. And looking forward to seeing what you're coming up with on social media and beyond. We'll talk to you soon. See you on the next podcast. Bye.
And while you're at it, stay tuned for the robot version coming soon of the Living Artist Podcast. Ha 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 ha. Look forward to bringing you new robotic content and AI content that will blow your circuit.
This has been the Living Artist Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I just want you to know that I appreciate you being here, and I'm grateful to be in your ears. Your art and creative life on this planet is meaningful, so thank you for sharing it with me. If you like this podcast, whatever platform you're listening to it on, please subscribe and share it with your friends. You can also leave me a positive review to show your support. This helps me to reach more people with the algorithmic magic and keep the show going strong. If you want to see more of what I do and check out the art that I create, you can visit my website at www.pmsartwork.com or follow me on social media everywhere at PMS Artwork. That's it for now. See you back here next time.